Credit to the Minnesota Reformer, where Dave and I both saw this story. 50 Minnesota school districts still using seclusion rooms. This is data from the Minnesota Disability Law Center. And among the individuals quoted in the story is now with us Jessica Heiser. She is their supervising attorney, education team leader with Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid. Jessica, thank you very much. Jessica is on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline. Do you and your organization believe any schools should be allowed to use seclusion rooms?
Well, thanks for having me to talk about this. The simple answer is no. Data has pretty consistently reported, both in Minnesota and across the country, that seclusion is not necessary for any child. And in fact, it's pretty traumatic and sets them off on some pretty horrible lifelong consequences. So no, we don't think any school should have seclusion or seclusion rooms.
I'm always drawn to stories like this because I have a son with cognitive delays, and I've watched when the school he attended was outstanding, but I've heard other stories where I have been greatly troubled. This practice is banned or limited in a dramatic way in 21 states. Tell people how the law works in our state.
Sure. So in Minnesota, a law was passed that went into effect at the start of the 2024-25 school year. So it's only been in effect for a little over a year. And it essentially said that our youngest learners, birth through third grade, are not allowed to be secluded. Secluded is just another word for solitary confinement, where you put a child who is dysregulated in a room by themselves. You lock the door and they have to figure out how to regulate themselves and calm down by themselves in a room by themselves. So K through 3, kindergarten through third grade, is not allowed to use this practice. But there is talk at the legislature right now that it should actually be expanded, and that instead of prohibiting the practice for kindergarten through third grade, that we should actually allow it at all levels and allow children from K through 12th grade to be allowed to be in solitary confinement.
Jessica, what do you say to people on the other side of the argument who say whether it's a child with cognitive delays or it's someone else who is going to harm someone, they are physically putting other children in danger, and they're of such nature that the teacher or the teachers cannot control them in this particular classic schoolroom setting, and they can use this to get them to calm themselves down, regulate themselves, and have this available for a short period of time. For folks on that side of the argument, you say what?
For those folks on that side of the argument, I think there's a lot of stuff we agree on. You know, all kids and all staff should feel safe at school. And there are kids who have significant disabilities and become dysregulated and can injure themselves or others. And we got to keep everybody safe at school. So we all agree on that. Where we disagree is that the seclusion room is the solution. For us at Minnesota Disability Law Center and Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, we have seen so much data and we have heard from so many school staff members, educators, administrators who say, you know, we have so many other solutions that work for children who might be physically aggressive or cause injury in our schools. So we've got calming rooms, sensory rooms. We have de-escalation training. We have training that has to do with relationship building and making sure that it's not about compliance and some kind of power struggle between a teacher and a student. but we really focus instead on trauma-informed care, de-escalations, relationships. And then we do have these rooms in these schools that are true sensory rooms or calming rooms that are these like big classroom-like settings that have, beanbag chairs and swings and low lighting and great music that kids can choose from. And you get to go in there as a child who's dysregulated with an adult who can still keep a safe distance from you, but can help you co-regulate and teach you how to manage those behaviors in a way that sets you up better for life and sets you up so that you don't keep repeating the behavior. The seclusion rooms, all the data and research tells us that, like, you lock a kid in a room by themselves and all you're doing is either making that behavior last longer, or you're just making it repeat the behavior because the kid never gets the tools they need to learn how to regulate their behaviors. So I think we all really agree, like, schools should be safe. No one should have physical injury at school, but there are a lot better ways to address this than putting kids in solitary confinement in the classroom.
Jessica Heiser is with us from the Minnesota Disability Law Center. We're talking about seclusion rooms. Okay. Do we have any idea? Because there is data in this story, and you've talked about some of the data yourself, which you have, which I'm sure your organization provided some of this to Minnesota Reformer, that a couple years ago, the 23-24 school year, 553 students with disabilities were subjected to just short of 3,500 instances of seclusion. Do we have any idea how long the typical child is left in one of these rooms alone? Is it a brief period of time? Is it an extended period of time? Where if it is a child with disability challenges and they're just left by themselves, I do question what they're learning. I also do know, I've witnessed it because of Quentin, some kids who are acting out very violently. Do I want to see them on their own? No. I think an adult has to be with them, should be. But I want to get a little better idea on the schools. Are they just for a very short period of time, which some might defend, versus I don't see how there's any defense if it's for a longer period of time. And I know you see it differently, but I'm trying to understand how some people on the other side of the argument might view it.
No, it's a good question about how long kids are in these rooms, because the law says that it should only last for the extent of an emergency. So when we think of emergency and how the legal definition defines it, it should be a very short period of time. There are a lot of districts who say, yes, we use seclusion, but it is for that emergency period only. It's maybe for 2 minutes. It's for less than 10 minutes. And then there are other records that come in that say sometimes it lasts for hours. Not only have school districts been found unlawfully using seclusion by the Minnesota Department of Education for using it for hours on end, we've had cases at the Minnesota Disability Law Center where a student was locked in a room by themselves for upwards of 3 hours. Shouting, let me out, let me talk to my mom, denied food, denied water, and the mom only found out about it later. So it spans the gamut. It really does. There are times where seclusion does last for a short period of time, for less than 10 minutes. It is an emergency. But it's very true that there are also significant amount of times where it lasts for over an hour, hours plus. It's all across the board. So it's a really difficult conversation to have when people insist that it only lasts for, a minute or less. That's just not what the data supports.
Last thing, and you're with the Minnesota Disability, Law Center. So this is a little bit out of your area. But if now we're talking about kids who don't have some of the cognitive challenges and they're having some sort of outburst and there's concern about violence and harming others, What about those kids and going into one of these rooms for a short period of time? Do you have a view on that?
Our view is that these kids are these rooms are dangerous for all kids. So kids with any sort of disability, whether it be autism or some sort of developmental delay, or if it's kids who are non-disabled, that being in solitary confinement, having to go into a small room and have the door locked when you're dysregulated is bad for everyone. I would just challenge someone, the next time you're at your absolute worst, you're at the angriest you've ever been, think about, what if my loved one or a trusted adult put me in a closet right now and locked the door behind me and said, calm yourself down in there. I don't think any of us would sign on for that was an effective way to get us back down to zero. So we don't want these rooms for any kids at all.
Jessica, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Jessica Heiser, Minnesota Disability Law Center supervising attorney, education team leader. You heard the conversation. Do you think schools are making 100% a mistake when they use these seclusion rooms? That there has to be a better way, including these sensory rooms, including having an adult in the room? Or do you think there can be examples where a seclusion room makes sense? And then also let's understand there is a significant difference between some of the children with cognitive delays versus kids who are not facing that intellectual challenge. I'm sure plenty of people have different opinions. I'd love to hear from you through a phone call or a text. 651-461-9226.